You're listening to Switched On Australia, the podcast that tracks the opportunities and challenges of electrifying everything, everywhere. Switched On is brought to you by the publishers of Renew Economy, Australia's best informed, most read website focusing on the green energy transition, and is supported by Boundless Earth, using philanthropy, investment and direct advocacy to help Australia become a global force in a decarbonised world. Hello and welcome to the Switched On Australia podcast. Thanks for joining me. I'm Anne Delaney. My guest today is Tim Forsey. Tim is an independent energy consultant and researcher from Melbourne who provides advice to householders on how to improve the energy performance and comfort of their homes and how to save money and reduce carbon emissions by doing that. And that usually involves electrifying. Tim is also the founder of My Efficient Electric Home Facebook page, which he started back in 2015 as a way for householders to exchange information about space heating, water heating and cooking using devices that are fuelled only by renewable heat and electricity. It's an incredibly valuable resource, and as far as I can see, there's nothing else that provides the sort of practical, hands-on advice on how to upgrade and electrify our homes. And perhaps because of that, the group has now over 100,000 members from all around Australia. But Tim didn't start out as an energy transition warrior. Many moons ago, he worked for the gas and petrochemical industries. So I started my discussion with Tim Forsey by asking him how a gas man became pro-renewables.
So I studied as a chemical engineer, but even going before that, I was a child of the energy crisis of the 70s in North America. And I said we grew up with ice and snow, but energy prices went up. So we were wrapping our hot water services with insulation. And my folks even had triple glazed windows in North America in the 70s. So that was kind of new technology in the 70s. But it made sense because it was 20 degrees below zero outside. So you wanted to try to be more comfortable. But then I went to uni, and I was always interested in efficiency. My career started in the petrochemical industry, where we tried to do things as efficiently as possible because we were talking about big industry, and even if you could reduce your energy use by 1%, that was millions of dollars a year. So that was something that we chased. But then I did migrate to Australia and was working in the oil and gas industry with Esso and BHP. And again, you try to be as efficient as possible, not waste things. But at some point, I became very climate aware. I mean, working with Exxon, we were fully aware of climate change since, of course, 1992 with the, initial climate conferences. And we understood the climate science, the mechanism of the greenhouse gases, etc. Chemical engineers understand this sort of stuff. We didn't know what to do about it, but we certainly knew it was going to be an issue, going to be a problem. And then eventually, though, and when you worked in the gas industry 20 years ago, you could say, well, at least it's not coal, it's better than coal. So you can justify these things. But eventually, I could not get as excited as my management were about getting oil and gas out of the ground ever faster. Yeah. So I started to look around and do other things, which led to some of the Melbourne Uni research and then this semi-retired activity I have now of going into people's homes. But I was doing this even as a volunteer down in Bayside, Melbourne in 2007, working with the local council, we set up a volunteer program where we would go into people's homes and try and help our neighbors to reduce their footprint. That was 2007. So, just been banging on around this for a while.
Well, keep on banging, Tim. Tell me about My Efficient Electric Home. What were you hoping to achieve with the group and what's been the response to it?
Sure, this is a bit of a long story. I'll go way back a bit, but about 8 years ago at the University of Melbourne, I was doing some casual research, and we worked out that people could heat their homes for a third the cost by using reverse cycle air conditioners rather than burning gas. And that was all pretty remarkable because years ago I migrated to Australia to work in the gas industry. But here I was at Melbourne Uni later in my career doing some research, and we found out that people would be better off if they didn't use any gas in their homes at all. And this was just from an economic point of view. So that was a good story. We published some things. We got some media attention, but the story just didn't go out far enough. And so I was wondering what to do about that. And one day my kid said, Dad, there's this thing called social media. And I said, okay, what's that? And they said, like Facebook. So I started the Facebook group, now known as My Efficient Electric Home, where initially we talked about heating homes with air conditioners, but then people wanted to branch out and talk about, of course, the solar panels and heat pump for hot water and draft proofing and insulation and window treatments and all those things. So My Efficient Electric Home was what the group became, and the size of it has doubled every year for about 8 years or so. We're up to 91,000 members now, with up to 200 new members joining each day. So it won't be long before we're at 100,000. And what you see going on there is people all across the country, even internationally, helping each other to make their homes more comfortable, to deal with the cost of living by turning to cheaper ways to heat a house, to run a house, and also how to make them more comfortable with the draft proofing tips and insulation, etc. So yeah, some people would say it's the best thing on Facebook. So yeah, it's doing well.
And here in Australia, do you put the high take up down to the fact that we're sort of in this stage now where we're all desperate for information about how to make our homes more efficient and electrify them?
Yeah, I suppose we've always known that our homes are pretty uncomfortable, and I suppose particularly in the colder places in the wintertime. I'm in Melbourne, of course, Canberra, Tasmania. A lot of people chipping in, Ballarat, but also in some of the places in New South Wales and Queensland in particular. Yeah, people have known their homes are uncomfortable, but they kind of lived with that. Certainly working from home has meant that more people have realized just how bad their homes are, and then they started to run up some quite big energy bills, in particular because, as we identified years ago at Melbourne Uni, the price of gas has gone up quite a bit once we started exporting liquefied gas out of Queensland. So gas all across the East Coast, the price went up quite dramatically, and people started to notice those huge energy bills. So what to do about it? Often you find information at, for example, government websites can be a bit out of date, not terribly useful, or the energy companies and others, they'll put up the same tips, drop your thermostat a degree, make sure the seals around your refrigerators are good, those sorts of things we've been hearing for a long, long time. But I think that with a platform like Facebook where you can upload photographs and links and even spreadsheets, etc., gave people a lot more information that they could have a look at and then proceed to take action at home.
And is the cost of energy one of the main themes that is talked about on the page?
From the experience at the Facebook group, or in my business where I go into people's homes for 3 hours and we look at everything and discuss their options, what really gets the phone ringing, and also we see a greater uptick in the membership all of a sudden at My Efficient Electric Home, is a cold spell coming across Australia is what really brings people in. And so that's not the energy bill, that's the realization they woke up in the morning and they've got moisture all over their windows, or it's just bloody freezing out in the kitchen or something. And that's what more than anything else, and for people who've been in this space even longer than I have, they know that comfort can be the number one driver. And you can see something similar in the summertime when it gets hot. Then people want to know about how to shade their windows and how to better operate their air conditioners or their fans, or to stay cool. So the comfort and the weather changes is a real thing that gets people to take some immediate action, to find out where they can find more information. And then of course there's always been the environmental side, the climate side. People interested in switching off the fossil fuels. But then you do find people, as I say, with the price of gas in particular going up, wanting to know what to do other than to keep getting big gas bills. Goodness me, I was just in a house the other day, and the people were absolutely shocked. Their first gas bill was only 40 days, but it's $1,000. So that's $25 a day they're paying for gas. And they just actually absolutely blew them away. It's a big house. They paid a lot of money for this big old house, and it's very inefficient. But yeah, they just had no idea going in that they would be up for that. If there had been a mandatory rating system like the UK's had or the Canberra's had for a long time, yeah, it would have said this is a 0-star house and you're going to be up for a big gas bill unless you do something about it.
One of the hurdles we face in making our homes all electric is every house is different and every householder needs or wants something different, which makes it hard to give generic advice when it comes to electrifying and making a home more energy efficient. Tim Forsey says we need to tailor solutions to individual circumstances and goals. But he admits it's hard for people to find good advice, which is why it's easy for the gas industry to keep peddling misinformation.
Here's an example. So I was in a home with a young couple, and I'm sitting there in the lounge room looking. It's winter. I'm looking at the reverse cycle air conditioner up on the wall, perfectly good new air conditioner on the wall that they're not using for heating. They're running the ducted gas heating. So I said, I see you're running the ducted gas heating. Tell me about that. And they said, yeah, last winter we were lucky. The ducted gas heating failed, but we were lucky we had this reverse cycle air conditioner there. We could use it for heating for a couple weeks while we organized to spend $5,000 for a new gas heater. And then we went back to the gas heating. And then I just have to say, well, one of the reasons you got me here is for my knowledge. And a key message is that the cheapest way by far to heat your house is with the reverse cycle air conditioner, maybe a third the cost. So I'm very sorry that last winter you spent $5,000 for a gas heating system, which now basically should be thoughtfully recycled while you use the reverse cycle air conditioner and save yourself a bit of money. And so this was, a couple clients that were switched on enough to somehow track me down and have me into their house, but they've missed my key message until I was actually there in person to deliver it. And so that just means there's millions of people out there that, just don't even have a clue that the new air conditioner they bought last summer, they thought they were going to use mostly for summer cooling. It's sitting right there, the cheapest way to heat their house, but they haven't even switched it on to use it in that situation. And there's lots of reasons. I mean, down here in Victoria, the fossil gas industry is still running ads saying that, gas is cheaper, greener, and cleaner than something. They don't say what it's cheaper, cleaner, or greener than. It's just cheaper than something. I don't know, maybe it's cheaper than throwing, dollar bills into your fireplace, I guess. That would be about it. So they, occasionally the Advertising Council does jump on them a bit, but often they get away with this. So this is continuing to, confuse people, mislead people. So that's unfortunate. But also we have a legacy of demonizing the use of air conditioners because it's like, it's a summer heat wave. Don't use your air conditioner. It'll be expensive and crash the electricity grid. And I say to people, I don't care whether you use your air conditioner in summer or not. That's up to you. But use it all winter long because it's your cheapest way to heat.
What are your views, though, on solar and batteries, which are obviously quite big on the electrification agenda? Where do you sit when you advise clients about solar and batteries?
Well, anybody that's got a decent roof, facing the sun, is probably going to be very interested in solar. And look, for some homes, if they're not up for all the rebates and maybe if the roof isn't fantastic, they could be looking at an 8 or 10 year payback for solar. So it's not necessarily a barn burner, but a lot of them will want to do it anyway. They do understand that the renewable energy credits get smaller every year. And so I often say to people, do solar this calendar year or forget about it. But at the same time, we've undoubtedly also come up with other ways people can spend money, whether it's going to be improving their insulation in their roof space or doing the draft proofing, getting a hot water heat pump, all those other things you could spend money on. So solar is not necessarily the number one thing, but it is a very important thing for people to look at. And then as far as the battery, in Melbourne, with the electricity prices we have and the constraints that we don't have on, how we operate our solar homes, batteries don't make a lot of economic sense for homes in Melbourne right in this time. But if you're in a place where, the power might go out from time to time up in the Dandenongs when a tree blows over, you might want to get a battery and wire it up so that you can island from the grid and get through a power outage like that. And then we are, I've been reading in Renew Economy about some of these crazy electricity prices in South Australia, for example, or constraints that they're putting on solar homes like in Queensland where, that kind of drives people to either an electric car or a battery or something to soak up a lot of electricity that maybe wouldn't be produced otherwise because of some sort of limit on the grid, or get a home battery that then can take them through the nighttime and give them cheap electricity throughout the night.
You're listening to Switched On Australia, and my guest today is energy consultant Tim Forsey, who established the My Efficient Electric Home Facebook page. One of the big issues that has emerged on the My Efficient Electric Home page has been the fees that householders get charged to disconnect from the gas network, anything from $0 to a couple of thousand. In Victoria, the energy regulator has capped this fee at $220, but the gas companies are still able to recoup the rest of the cost of a disconnection from the remaining customers who stay connected to gas, which inevitably will just drive more people off the gas. That's if they can afford it or are able to electrify.
Initially, anyone wanting to disconnect from the gas grid, it was kind of novel and unusual. No one ever wanted to do that before. And so then, drip by drip, people started, wanting to disconnect their homes from the gas grid. And initially, the gas industry didn't really understand what was going on or ignored it. I mean, I suppose for years, people have rung up the gas company and said, look, I'm going to do a renovation. The gas meter's in the way. Can you get that out of the way? Then we'll do the renovation, and later on we'll reconnect to gas. So there was always that mechanism. But now people are ringing up the gas companies and to take away the gas meter. But the thing is, they'd never call the gas company up again. And they were wondering, when are these people going to want their gas meter back? So that's part of the process. Says you can get off the gas for heating, use the reverse cycle air conditioner, it's cheaper. Get off the gas for the hot water, use a heat pump, it's cheaper. Get off the gas for cooking, use an induction cooktop, it's safer and healthier. And then you no longer need to get a gas bill. Often I present to the public in community groups, and a question I'll ask early on is, raise your hand, please, if you want to receive a gas bill for the rest of your life. And I've not really had anybody raise their hand to that question. So here we have the opportunity. I mean, if you go back, 10 years, a lot of people had fantasies that we'd all be disconnecting from the electricity grid. That's unlikely. People will stay connected to the electricity grid. They'll stay connected to the water and sewer grid. But here's a grid you can say goodbye to. That's the gas grid. So stop using the gas. Then you ring up the gas company and say, you can see I'm not using gas. Stop sending me a bill. But then there have been interesting experiences happen all around the country, and these were kind of documented in an article I published recently, where people were being charged like up to $1,500 in places in New South Wales, or $1,000 in Canberra, $500 on the western side of Melbourne to see the final disconnection from the gas. Now, I only paid $69, and my son and others have paid $0. So it was a real crapshoot, or the Wild West, as to what actually happens when you get to that point. And recently for Victorian, the Australian Energy Regulator has declared that everybody should pay $220 for something to happen. And so that's an interesting space still to see when you do finally get off, stop using gas. What will you be charged? To A, stop receiving a bill. B, maybe have the meter taken away. C, maybe to have some pipes taken away out of the garden as well. The gas industry and the governments and the regulators and the community really do need to get their head around what is going to be the process here for wrapping up the gas grid.
And also, who should pay for the disconnection of the gas? Should it really be left to individuals who've been paying these network fees for years anyway?
Well, that's right. I mean, if you change phone companies, they don't ask you to pay, a fee to change the phone company or to switch a superannuation plan. Or if you buy an electric car, you don't get a bill from the petrol station to help them to decommission the petrol station. But that's what's happening here is people are getting off gas. They're having to pay for the gas industry to get their property off of your property. So no, I think a better situation is that the individual home doesn't pay, but of course there are costs involved. And so we are all going to pay one way or the other for the wrapping up of the gas grid. The companies that do the job, they will be paid. They're regulated monopoly industries, so they always get paid. So there's a couple questions. First, how do you decommission the gas grid in a least cost way? Probably, going ad hoc down the street, doing one house this month and another house across the street the next month, etc. That's probably not the most organized, cheapest way to go about it. And then how do you recover the costs or spread the costs, or what do you do about the costs? But it seems to me raising a barrier to the homes that have made investments, done all the right things to get off of fossil gas, shouldn't be hit baby one last time for one more fee.
How important is it, though, to disconnect the gas pipes rather than just asking the gas company to cease supplying the gas? There is a safety issue there, isn't there?
There can be a safety issue, and really that shouldn't be the homeowner's issue. Yeah, the gas industry has to figure out what they need to do to make their property safe. And I know that from my experience in industrial work that I did for decades, you do have to be a little bit concerned of a phenomenon known as, for example, dead leg corrosion. And this is a pipeline that used to have flow going through it. There's always a little bit of water in our gas, and if you stop the flow and now you've just got a dead leg pipe there, liquid water can collect in a pipe and maybe lead to corrosion, and that eventually could lead to a gas leak. So the gas company knows about these risks, and so they need to come up with a plan to deal with that, eliminate all those risks. Some of the more interesting things that have been discussed is, wouldn't it be nice if we could, in a coordinated way, get all the houses off in a street off gas altogether, and then all you got to do is find some pipe connection at the end of the street that you seal off, and basically there's no gas going down that whole street anymore. So, and then go collect your meters, go home. If there's a few, dead pipes underneath the soil, well, there's lots of those there anyway from all the different utilities we use. So that's a more creative way of trying to decommission things without treating each home as a special case.
So, what do you think about banning new gas connections so people don't have to go through the inevitable and often costly process of having to disconnect?
A lot of us all know now, and the governments all know now, that it doesn't make any sense to connect homes to gas. But if we don't, actually ban things, it's just the people that are uninformed that are going to walk into that trap. So should we set traps about for people, or should we, do the blindingly obvious thing and not be in connecting these homes to gas? I mean, if you put it up as an option and said, hey, would you like this hazardous, dangerous, special fuel source brought to your house at a cost of 10 grand, and put that in front of people, where they were making an informed decision, okay, that would be one option. Yeah, I mean, I'm not, philosophically a fan of bans, but you got two choices: either ban it or put a whole lot of, useful information in front of people so they can make a valid decision. So what you'd find is down the street, you'd have like one house that might be interested in this, this special fuel. Let them pay for the whole thing.
I mean, there's been a lot of discussion about the role of energy efficiency in the energy transition. How important is energy efficiency for the electrification agenda?
Well, it's certainly not a sexy word, and people have heard about it for decades, so they do kind of switch off. And what is what is energy efficiency anyway? Well, part of it, of course, is the draft ceiling and the window treatments and the insulation. And so those are important energy efficiency things. But when you say to people, these things will make you more comfortable and save you money, the word efficiency doesn't even necessarily come up in the average household. So the word efficiency is more, a word for policy wonks and engineers and stuff like that. But in the average household, it doesn't really come up that much. They just want to know how to be comfortable and save money and do the greenest thing. So I don't even necessarily use the word efficiency that much. I mean, a reverse cycle air conditioner can put heat into a place at 10 times greater efficiency than a gas burner. But that's not, factor 10, that's amazing. And it's a total game changer. But what people really want to know is that it's 3 times cheaper to be using the air conditioner rather than the gas. They don't really care that it's 10 times more efficient.
There's no doubt retrofitting homes that have already been built is much harder than building new all-electric homes with high energy efficiency standards. However, even though we have building codes in Australia, Tim Forsey says we need better regulation to ensure builders and developers actually build houses to the standards they claim they will.
What we haven't done very much of is actually checking to ensure that things are being built the way they need to be. And so you might find in a home Eventually, you work out that, that wall was meant to have insulation, and on paper it was going to have insulation, and the star rating said it should have had insulation, but, they stopped putting insulation in the wall halfway up. And you only find that out later because the homeowner realizes that bit of wall is very hot or very cold, and maybe you do some thermal imaging and you can prove it. And that's because nobody checked before the plaster went up that the insulation job was actually done or had been correctly done. I grew up overseas in North America where, we had ice and snow as a kid. And if you had a wall like that, you'd have ice on the inside of the wall. And so that would be a dead giveaway that the home had not been built properly. And you'd work that out within the first winter, and then you'd get the builder back in when it's under warranty, and it would be fixed. But because that happened to a builder once, okay, from then on he did it right. Because you had this climactic situation that would tell you that the house had not been built properly. I guess the problem in the Australian climates is, it's relatively mild weather throughout Australia if you look at it on a global scale. And so people can get away with building things that aren't that good, that are passed off as being good because, it had a good star rating. But, they didn't close up the gap behind the fridge or behind the dryer in the laundry room, or they didn't install a fan with a backdraft damper. And so, for various reasons, the home is very leaky, or it's missing insulation here and there. But, it's going to take a while for people to figure that out and realize it's a problem. And then what are you going to do 5-6 years down the track? Bring the builder back to fix something? All seems too hard. If the house was falling... So
what do you think the solution is? What do you think the solution is? How do we make builders deliver?
Yeah, you would just need inspection. You need inspection along the way. So you need an inspection of the insulation before the plaster goes up. And you need a blower door test to, at the end of the construction to test the tightness of the house, which would then identify that gap above the fridge, which can be relatively easily fixed from day zero rather than waiting to 5 or 6 years down the track when the homeowners experienced over a few winters that there must be something going on behind the refrigerator.
Tim Forsey, thank you very much for joining the Switched On podcast today.
Thanks for having me.
And Tim Forsey is an independent energy consultant and researcher from Melbourne. That's a wrap for today's Switched On podcast. I hope you can join me for our next 2 episodes when we look at what the house of the future might be able to do with smart energy technology, but also whether those houses are really what householders want and who will be able to access them. I'm Anne Delaney. I hope you can join me then.